Good morning.
Welcome to the Common Read with Maggie Sheffer. I'm Dr. David Hanson, and this event is sponsored by the Department of English and World Languages, also by the Southeastern Writing Center and its staff. We thank the support of the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, our Dean, Dr. Jeff Light, the Southeastern Channel, and we thank all of you for coming. Welcome to all of you students here in the ballroom and all of those of you who are streaming online. We're especially pleased to welcome our dual enrollment classes who have come here to campus to join us. We have Ponchatoula High, Touchdown, Barnabelle, Courtney Christian, Destrehan, Ascension Christian, Annabelle, Young Audiences, East St. John, Falls River Academy, and the Louisiana School for the Visually Impaired. Welcome to all of you. Please download the QR code that you'll see on the screen. That is your sign-up sheet to show to your instructors that you are here, and also allows us to collect data for the Common Read program. At the Q&A, we're asking you to come to the microphone here and to line up by filling these seats here. Now to welcome our Common Read author. Marguerite Sheffer earned her MFA from Randolph College, and she comes to us from Tulane, where she teaches courses in design thinking and speculative fiction as tools for social change. In New Orleans, Maggie is founding member of the Third Lantern Lit, a local writing collective, and the Novelist and the Wildcat Writing Groups. She's a member of the Brackish Artist Collective, a program by the New Orleans Water Collaborative, which provides opportunities for artists to explore our complex and disconnected relationship with water in Southeast Louisiana. Our Common Read, The Man in the Banana Trees, won the Iowa Short Fiction Award in 2024. The collection was also named a Debutful Best Debut Book of the Year, an Electric Literature Most Exciting Debut Collection, and a finalist for the PEN America Robert W. Bingham Prize. Other prizes include a 2023 Visa South Scholar Fiction in the Detroit Journal, and a top 25 finalist for Glimmer Train's Short Story Award for New Writers. Her story, Tiger on My Roof, was a finalist for the 2024 Chautauqua Janus Prize. Maggie said in an interview that what keeps her coming back to draft after draft is a feeling of being on the edge of her skill. As readers, I think we feel that too, as we're being brought to an edge by every story. It's very exciting. I'm going to wait for our new arrivals in the back to find a seat. Welcome, everybody. And now let's welcome Maggie Sheffer.
Thank you. Y'all can hear me okay? Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for reading this book. Thank you, David, Allison, and everybody else at Southeastern. It is such an honor to be here. And I must say, I am stunned by these projects. I've been doing a lot of these kind of events as a person with a debut book out, but this is by far the coolest thing I've gotten to do. So thank you. And I guess I'm going to open it right up to questions. Yeah. Who's got questions? I've got answers.
Questions could come, they're going to come to the mic this way, but I need you to line up and approach the stage like this. I know there's going to be a brave someone.
You can do it. I don't bite. Okay. Once it's quiet, we'll hear the first question. And could you tell me your name too, please?
Ethan Mutzi. I read your short story Yellow Ball Python and in my class, and I was wondering, you left the gender of the narrator ambiguous, and I was wondering, was that intentional, or was that like a separate person, separate character, or was that supposed to be understood as you?
Great question. Thank you, Ethan, for that question. So Ethan noticed that in Yellow Ball Python, there are no gender pronouns. It's left open. And that was an intentional choice to do that. It was that way from the first draft, and an early reader, a member of my writing group, pointed it out, and I really liked the way that felt, because everyone in my writing group had different assumptions about who was what gender, and I liked that tension. I liked that unknowability, and I liked that sometimes the narrator character could be a man or a woman, that people could see themselves more in the story. And there's another story that plays with that a little bit too, The Wedding Table, that has a relationship with the gender pronouns being a little uncertain. So I think that's just been fun to play with, but my most fun thing is to see who readers assume the genders are. So it kind of puts the emphasis on readers to project their biases into the story a bit.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, what's your name?
Hello? Okay. My name is Hannah Tomplay. It's probably a really bad time for me to be here because I have not read the story. I have not read the book, but decided to come. I have sort of done I sort of looked at like an overview of your book.
Sure.
And what it was about. And I would like to ask, what was some of like the inspiration for a lot of your stories? Because I sort of looked and I saw that a lot of it deals with past tense, like future, past, present, and also deals a lot with, I guess, surrealist elements. So I guess I wanted to ask where that came from.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you for your honesty. I hope you read the book and enjoy it. So Hannah asked about the inspiration for the stories, specifically, if I'm getting it right, some of like the past, present, future, surrealist, genre bouncing stuff. Is that right? Okay. And the inspiration, I mean, the tricky thing about writing genre fiction, I read a lot of science fiction, a lot of fantasy, horror, which is weird for me because I'm very squeamish, a lot of magical realism. And I think the funny thing is that the inspiration is still my real life. It's still the things that keep me up at night. It's still the things I'm reading in the news. It's still the thing my neighbor said about a yellow ball python being loose in our neighborhood. The inspiration is still every day, but I find that I can actually be, in a weird way, more honest and I can grapple more deeply with the hard stuff if I make it a story about a spaceship or a ghost or a witch or what have you, because I really enjoy those topics. And it gives me this layer of playing aroundness that is really fun. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she plays with dolls, but the things her dolls say are things that happened in her day, and that's how I feel as a writer. I'm like processing the hard stuff of my life through writing these make-believe stories in a way that a toddler would, almost, but it helps me kind of have those ahas without feeling some of the shame or fear or guilt that I might otherwise feel.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Riley Page. I'm from Associate Christian High, and we had a question for our whole class. We were wondering why choose a yellow ball python specifically?
It's a great question. Thank you, Riley and class. The question was, why choose a yellow ball python? That is directly ripped from my life. I live in New Orleans, and there in fact was a sign, much like the sign in the story, that said there was a yellow ball python loose in my neighborhood. And as a writer, I really liked the juiciness of those words. Yellow ball python just instantly brought to mind an image that was the opposite of like a cute, quaint little neighborhood that I lived in, and the idea of this scary snake being loose in my neighborhood and unfound and hiding somewhere was the germ of the story. That's about where the similarities end, but that idea was directly ripped from life. So I would sit there at my computer looking at pictures of yellow ball pythons to do research for the story, and it was very cool to have this thing just appear as I was literally walking my dog that became the seed for a story.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so one thing I noticed a lot, and even my class noticed, you mentioned kids a lot. Was it on purpose, or did it just kind of slip in while you were writing unintentionally?
Thank you for the great question. And what's your name?
Isabella?
Isabella. So Isabella's question was that they noticed that in the book, there are many stories that mention kids, and was that intentional or did it just happen? It just happened. When I was writing these stories, I wasn't actually trying to write a book. I wasn't sitting there writing a collection, actually. I was just writing stories that came to mind. I was a student at an MFA program learning about writing, so I was really trying to learn to write at the same time as I was writing these stories, and they were among the first stories I've ever finished. And that was really freeing. I wasn't really thinking about publication at first. I was thinking about turning in assignments for my mentors and my teachers. And it wasn't until I put the collection together that I realized how many of them were about children. So obviously I have a bit of an obsession that was revealed by this act. But it does make sense. I was a high school English teacher for about 10 years. I'm now a parent. I still teach young people, though they're now adult young people. And I think I'm endlessly fascinated with the disservice that our nation does to young people and how we fail to protect them and ask too much of them. So I think that shows up a lot in the book. But it wasn't necessarily a thesis statement I had when I was sitting down to write a book. I didn't think I'm going to write 25 stories about youth. It came up because I feel really obsessed and compulsed by it. And I am not an essayist. I'm not good at writing essays. But when something really won't leave the back of my mind, what I do is I write a story.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Sheffer.
Good morning.
My name is Joshua from Desperham. I like personally forest creatures the best, but how can the idea of forest creatures relate to real life today?
Great question. Say your name one more time.
Joshua.
Joshua. Thank you, Joshua. The question was, how can the How We Became Forest Creatures story relate to real life today? So at the time, it's definitely a science fiction story set on another planet. And I think the fun is that it could relate to lots and lots of different things. At the time when I wrote it, as now, there were quite a lot of protests going on. And there was this debate about whether protests needed to be peaceful in order to be effective. And that was one of the things I was thinking about when I was writing the story, is what would push this peaceful species to become a forest creature to defend itself. And I don't think the story has an answer. That's my favorite thing about writing short stories, is that it doesn't say, and here's the answer to the big question. It just kind of brings it up. But the things I was thinking about were violence, obviously, and when self-defense is necessary, if at all, and what you have to do to your soul to become, to self-defend yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Madeline Hubbard, and my question was about Ricky and the unicorn in captivity.
Sure.
And I was wondering, what made you choose such abstract ways, like the puppet and the different timelines of the unicorn, to depict real life situations and problems?
Yeah, thank you. Madeline, right? Madeline's question was about Ricky and the unicorn in captivity and what made me choose abstract ways of getting at our real life issues today. That's a great question. For me, that's what makes short story writing fun and science fiction fun. I'll talk about both stories if that's okay. For Ricky, I mentioned I was a teacher for about 10 years and I had the joy of working with many, many students. And I really got caught by this idea of what would happen if a Muppet was dropped into the high school we worked at. Because as a teacher, me and my colleagues, who I love and who were smart and careful, we talked a big game about being welcoming to every single student and wanting them to be curious and, proud and confident. And for me, the embodiment of those things is a Muppet. But if you actually dropped a Muppet into the high school I worked at, all hell would break loose. They wouldn't respect the bells, they would break things or stand up when they were supposed to be sitting down. And I think that hypocrisy was really exciting to dig into. And I'm really proud that I was a high school English teacher, but it let me get at some of the things I'm not proud of in a way that felt a little safe, because it wasn't a real human character. It was, in some ways, I care even more about Ricky because he's so vulnerable and he's this made-up thing that we come to love. Does that answer your question about Ricky?
Yes, and I was wondering, so is it like based off a personal experience while you wrote the story?
It was based off many personal experiences that were kind of melded into one. A question I frequently get, because Ricky seems to be a story that gets under people's skin a lot, a question I frequently get is this about students with a learning difference? Is this about students with a different performance of gender identity? It's like, what is Ricky's deal? And the answer is it's lots of different things, because he's inspired by hundreds of people I met in the 10 years I was teaching. So it's not just one thing. But I think what he represents is these students who are so brave, who are different, who are trusting and vulnerable and put themselves out there, but who are ultimately failed by the adults who should be valuing that over everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Dak Maui, and I wanted to ask, how does the title The Man in the Banana Trees summarize the overall book that contains many, many stories?
Thank you. The question was, why is the book titled The Man in the Banana Trees? How does it summarize a book that contains many stories? So for me, I made it the title story. It was almost Tiger on My Roof. I went back and forth with it quite a lot. But I'm happy with The Man in the Banana Trees because in that story, the man in the banana trees is kind of off screen, is always like barely visible around the edges. And I think that's something that is a theme of the collection and happens in a lot of stories. There's something like the python, like a ghost, like there's something wrong around the edges that the narrating character or the main character can't quite see or address, but that if they can see that thing, they'll get unstuck. So I think that that idea of this thing lurking that could be sinister but actually could be kind of helpful was a pattern I realized in all the stories. And also I just really liked the way it sounds. The Man in the Banana Trees makes me want to know, who is that, right? So I liked the intrigue of it. Thank you for the question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Javen. My question is, in the story in the wedding table, my class, we had an assignment where we had to write the end of the story. So if you had to continue writing the story, how would you end the story?
Not good. It would not be a happy ending. Thank you, Javen. Thank you, Javen, for the question. It was, if I had to continue the wedding table to add a little bit more to the ending and show what happened to those characters, how would it end? I definitely don't think well. So at the very end, their parents push them back into the chairs and the narrator's hand is cut off and they are married. But I don't think the signs are that it's going to be a very happy marriage because the narrator kind of just chickened out a bit and showed that they weren't totally ready. So I think they are going to be formally married, but there's going to be this seed of like doubt or disappointment at the beginning of this. And I think some of the things I was grappling with in that story are the way that we sacrifice for traditions. So I think that the narrator is going to be pretty unhappy at the start. Will they rebel? I'm very curious what y'all think, but I think they're in a bad place at the end of that story. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Glorianne, and I wanted to ask you, what made you want to go into creative writing, and how did you really hone in on that skill and become so good at it and efficient at it?
Lorianne, is that right?
Glorianne.
Glorianne, thank you. Are you a writer?
Maybe a little bit.
Okay,
More
yeah.
class.
Yeah. Okay. It's a great question. So the question is what made me want to go into creative writing and how I went about getting better at it. So yes, I have always, like since I was a very, very little kid, loved telling stories and writing stories. My mom still has copies of the first handwritten and illustrated books I wrote. So I've always loved that. I loved my English classes in high school so much so that I paid my teacher money to buy the textbook. And she told me I was the first person who ever did that. I took it home with me at the end of the year because I loved it so much for my AP English class. Majored in English in college, took some creative writing classes, but then I really fell in love with teaching. So I took about 10 years, and during those 10 years, I really didn't write at all. I read a lot of amazing novels with my students. I read a lot of their papers and their creative work, and I found that very creatively fulfilling, but I had this big break. And it wasn't until COVID hit, actually, and we were on lockdown, that I had both a lot of conundrums in my head and suddenly a lot of time by myself, that I started to actually put pen to paper and write. And I was... at that time, it wasn't like dreaming of doing this with you or even publishing a book that was getting me going. It was just kind of the need to write things down and journal a lot. And I had a lot of journaling going on. But then I found an MFA program, a Master of Fine Arts program in creative writing. And I, on a whim, decided to apply to it the day it was the deadline day. And I sent in an application to one program, and I happened to get in. And then I had to go. Didn't have to go, but I decided to go. I decided it was a sign, and I never kind of looked back from then. Then I just started writing like crazy. I love your question, though. How did you get better at it? I got better by working with mentors and sharing my work with them, by working with other writers who gave me wonderful feedback, by reading like crazy. I spent a whole semester working on endings, and I'm really proud of the endings of the story in this book, because when I started this MFA program, I had never ended a short story. So I just wanted to try like just looking at endings over and over and over again. And I did that. I looked at the endings of short stories, I looked at the endings of movies I liked and TV shows I liked, and then I just tried to practice lots and lots of different endings, and I think that that paid off for me. But it was kind of like, because I had done this long break, when I came back, I was like, it was kind of do or die for me. It was like, I'm gonna really put the pedal to the metal and write my heart out right now. And a lot of stories did come out, and I've kind of never looked back. But I will say too, I think one thing that I'm glad I had was this learning approach. I think when I'm setting out to learn by writing or to surprise myself with my writing, it always works better than if I'm like, I'm gonna go win this award and write this story. Then I try to play it safe, if that makes sense. I try to please other people. But when I'm doing it for me and my learning and trying to see what I can get away with or trying something that I'm not sure will be good, then it seems to really resonate more with other people, funnily enough. Yeah.
Thank you. May I also ask?
Yeah.
Why a banana tree?
Why a banana tree? There are actual banana trees in my yard, and they do this, you guys know banana trees, they do this thing where they kind of look like people in the wind, like, hey, and that image really struck me and made its way into the story.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Vivian, and I read your story in the style of Miriam Ackerman. And I was wondering if AI has had any influence on you personally as an artist.
Ooh, that's a bucket of fish. Vivian's question, thank you for the great one, was about the story in the style of Miriam Ackerman, which does deal with AI and art. And it was about if AI has had an impact on me as an artist. So I feel like so allergic to AI. I really hate it. And it's not to hate on people who use it. My husband is one of those people, so we talk about this a lot. But for me, it is just so boring. And if you're doing creative work, like I want to know what a human is thinking. I don't want this collage plagiarism machine to shoot me back something that someone else once thought in a different way. I want your honest new thoughts, as messy and complex as they are. So I would say as an artist, my response has been to like turn it off as much as I can. I'm like emailing tech support for the apps I use to ask them how to disable it in everything I have, because I find that I really fear it as an artist. I don't want to touch it. I'm also a teacher. I teach a college level class in which I ask students to write short stories, and sometimes they do use AI. And it is so obvious when that happens that it just reinforces my feelings. I actually just had to have a talk with them because students had a creative writing prompt, and when you open a creative writing prompt to a room of people, you should get such different stories, right? That's what's exciting about it, is to see the variety of what people can come up with. And we had 4 or 5 students who submitted exactly the same story with slightly different names, slightly different sentences, but it was exactly the same story. And the dull thud I felt of ugh, I don't want to read this. I don't want to deal with this, right? It's a waste of everyone's time and space. So if you asked someone in a different field how they felt about it, you might get a very different answer. But when it comes to art, I think art is our chance to talk to each other as humans about what it means to be human. And I don't want anything else to get in the way of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hi.
Hello, my name is Destiny, and I had a question about the unicorn in captivity. I was mainly wondering why you chose to leave the story somewhat open-ended instead of give it an actual ending.
Yeah. Do you think it worked?
I do. It was really interesting. It was definitely my favorite story, and it just had me wondering about it.
Yeah, thank you. Say your name one more time.
Destiny.
Destiny's question was about the unicorn in captivity and why I chose to leave it open-ended. So that story is both about a tapestry that survives lots and lots of calamities and depicts a unicorn in captivity, and also kind of about the present moment of climate change and when we're at the precipice of the unknown and we don't know what's going to happen. I think I wanted to leave it open-ended because I think the story is in essence about hope, and it's hard to write a story that leaves you feeling hopeful, or leaves hope feeling dangerous, I should say, if you actually say what happens. Does that make sense? So if I said, and then everything was great and they all survived, hope doesn't feel as important anymore. So I wanted to leave it in that moment of hope, because if we don't know what's going to happen, then we're kind of right there with the characters. We're still in their shoes, and we're choosing to hope for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brock. I wanted to ask you, over your course of writing, have you ever felt just disheartened or this isn't something you cannot accomplish anymore?
Great question, Brock. Brock asked if I ever feel disheartened or like I can't do it when I'm writing. I'm going to answer this a few times because I think it's so important to say all the time, every morning. I think I can't do it every single day. I think what practice has shown me is that when I come across a story that feels so challenging that I don't think I'm smart enough to write it, that's actually the one. That's the thing worth writing about because I don't feel smart enough to do it. And all the stories in the book went through maybe 30 drafts. And when I say 30 drafts, I don't mean changing a word here or there. I mean overhauls, changing everything, really reworking it to try to figure it out. And what kept me going back over the years it took, I'm talking literal years to write a 1,000-word story and be happy with it. What kept me coming back was the sense that there was something just beyond my reach that I wanted to accomplish with it, and that I, at one moment in time, wasn't quite smart enough to do it. Does that make sense? So I will say that practice makes it easier in that I'm now familiar with that feeling. Are any of y'all athletes in the room? Can you raise your hand? Okay, y'all are my heroes. I try to write kind of like an athlete. I'm an amateur runner, so I know that feeling. But it's right at that edge of what you can do. That's the exciting part. That's where you're building muscle and strength, right? And that's where it gets really juicy. And I find the same thing is true with writing fiction. So you just have to get comfortable with that uncomfortable feeling. But yeah, all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sean, and my question is, when it comes to when you're writing a pantheon of flavors,
yeah,
how did you imagine that the reader would interpret it? From a critique of consumer culture,
yeah,
how do you intend for it to be interpreted?
Thank you. Say your name one more time.
Sean.
Sean's question was about pantheon of flavors and how I hoped readers would interpret it when I wrote it. You're right on with the idea of critique of consumer culture. That one, a few stories in the collection, kind of touches on climate change. in a dark way, in a way that it's being commodified and that our fears and nostalgia is being sold back to us to not save the planet, but to just profit off of its death. And I think that marrying that dark thing with ice cream was kind of the aha moment I had with that story. I think I wanted, yes, to critique consumer culture. That's brilliant. And I also think that I wanted to surprise us a little bit out of complacency, because I think if I just said, like, I wrote an essay about consumer culture, it's easy to kind of wave away. But if I can marry it to something more surprising or evocative like ice cream, then I think it sticks around in the brain a little bit better and captures the imagination a little bit better. I will say too, I get asked a lot, like you just asked me these great questions about what my stories are about, but you guys are the ones to answer those questions because you've been studying them. When I write them, I almost feel like I'm going into a trance and I'm thinking about plot and character, but this aboutness question, I don't sit down with like today I'm going to write a story about grief and memory. Like that comes up with the analysis. It's not something I'm sitting there writing about. I think I'm writing about spaceships, and then it turns out the spaceship is my mom, is what I like to say. You know what I mean? Like it's a deep subconscious thing. So it's so cool to hear people interpret the stories and see that they're functioning on another level.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Wesley, and my question was about how we became forest creatures.
Yes.
Earlier, you were talking about how the inspiration for it was like protests, pushes them to become violent.
Yeah.
My question was, like, what was the inspiration behind the monsters, like the snatchers and stuff?
Oh, okay. I wish I knew the answer. Wesley's question was about what was the inspiration in how we became forest creatures for the monsters, the snatchers and the chompers in the trees. I read a lot of children's books to my daughter, and I think I don't have a specific inspiration in mind. There's some monkeys with like really big eyes. Those come to mind. But I think one of the fun things about writing is that when you're in a flow state with it, I'm not stopping to question anything. I often write with timers, which was the case with that particular story. And I remember setting like a 10-minute timer, and I drafted nearly the whole of the first draft. And the snatchers and the chompers were in it. And I was like, guess we're going with that. It still took a lot of time to polish, as I mentioned. Like my stories take a lot of work. But I am a big fan of the subconscious first draft, sometimes called the shit rough draft, meaning where you just write out what your brain wants to write without actually questioning it. So I wish I had a better answer for you, Wesley. I have no idea.
All right, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Cameron, and I just wanted to ask, I recently read the book At the Moment of Condensation.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just ask the author, what was the thought process on that story?
Yeah. So At the Moment of Condensation was actually originally written for a contest. And the contest, I think the prompt was falling water or rain, one of those two. And it had to be a flash fiction. So I had to write it really, really fast. This was a contest for Apex magazine, which if you're a science fiction fan, has a monthly contest and they publish flash fiction. I came to the idea of harvesting rainwater pretty quickly. And so the idea I was playing with is that this corporation is preventing people from harvesting their own rainwater because it's such a scarce commodity that it's like prized and it's become illegal. I thought I invented that, but it turns out that is actually done on the West Bank by Israel prior to me writing the story. So I thought I was like, I'm being so dystopian, but it turns out what I had imagined was actually already going on in the world. I learned later. But that story, I also liked the idea of having the way they collect the rainwater, the rebellious people, the protesters, being really fanciful. So the idea of the umbrellas collecting really amused me. But yeah, I think the idea that both that society has gotten to this point, where in the US, I think it's Oklahoma, they're preventing you from collecting rainwater, but also that people aren't complacent with it. There's people who are fighting back and doing their own thing and being creative about it. It was exciting to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again.
Hi.
My name is Isabella Barron's father. I'm faculty here at Southeastern. My question actually comes in a few parts.
Sure.
So it's regarding in the style of Miriam Ackerman. Okay. I thought it was really interesting you playing with this idea of like surveilling people like once they're gone. And also I imagined Miriam Ackerman looking like Bjork, and I'm not really sure why. My question is, would you say that this is more of like a critique of AI? Again, sorry, I'm asking a question about what is this about, but or the idea that we kind of like romanticize the dead once they're gone, how we kind of like consume people's lives once they can't like really control their narrative. It was really interesting to me to see the juxtaposition between how the nephew thought about her and then how the mother thought about her. And it made me think of like artists and musicians who like don't really get the recognition that they deserve until they're gone.
I'll start with that. Thank you, Isabella. Isabella's question was about in the style of Miriam Ackerman and the critique of AI there. So it's not just a critique of AI, but also about how we treat the dead, how we treat artists. I'm paraphrasing a lot of beautiful, beautiful summary there. So I think when I figured out how to do the story, it was because how I feel about AI and how I feel about how we talk about art and artists was in parallel. I think we sanitize people a lot to make them comprehensible to us or to make their lives more convenient for us. And I think AI is very good at that. It is very good at oversimplifying and packaging and making it as if there were one answer instead of, and erasing complexity, basically. So I think that all the versions of Miriam Ackerman that we see in the story are true, and none of them vibe together because she's a messy, complicated human who is essentially unknowable. And at the end, we don't get to know everything about her. And the narrator has to make his peace with that and say that, I think at the end, I'm hoping that it feels like her nephew loves her even though he will never know her entirely. But that we never get to know people entirely, but you just have to choose to love them anyway, I think. And AI is not up to the task of that. In fact, it pulls us the other direction, I think. It scrubs over the ugly bits, it erases complexity and things that don't quite fit right. So does that answer the first part?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And then I just have like a suggestion. I'm wondering if you've read Important Artifacts and Personal Property from the collection of Lenore Doolin and Harold Morris by Leanne Shafton. It's kind of set up like an estate sale catalog of her relationship, and the dead relationship, death of people, you know.
That's so cool. I don't have a pen, but I'll try to connect with you later and get it.
I'll see you later.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Isabella.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Albert, and I wanted to know about Midnight Revolt at Rand's year-round Christmas story. I wanted to know what made you write a story about identity like that, and if it can be interpreted as a trans-accepted story.
Yes.
Acceptance.
Yes. So Elisa's question, did I get your name right?
Yeah, Alyssa.
Alyssa, thank you. Alyssa's question was about the Midnight Revolt at Bertrand's year-round Christmas store and the inspiration behind the story and kind of what it's really about and if it can be interpreted, or it is about identity, and if it can be interpreted as being about transgender issues. Yes, definitely. It can be interpreted as being about those things. Those were some of the things in the back of my mind when I was writing that story. So much so that I'm not transgender myself. I know many people who are, but I also spent a lot of time on Reddit, actually, reading communities to try to familiarize myself with some narratives around younger people who'd been through a period of where they were struggling with their gender expression and gender identity. So that was definitely at the heart of that story. How did I get there with that story? I mean, as with so many other things, I'm not quite sure how the story initially got to that place. I will say my work gets categorized a lot in the world of weird fiction, and weird fiction is often thought of being a subgenre of horror, meaning there's a lot of weird horror out there. And I think what I was having fun with was reclaiming the weird and saying that actually addressing that thing that's causing us, some turmoil can actually hugely improve our lives. And if we can fight for that thing that society says is weird within us, that's actually a positive thing. So there's a lot of weird things that happen in the story, but they actually serve to protect and help the narrator through a hard time. Does that help?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, I'm Tiffany from Springfield. in the captivity of the unicorn, how is the tapestry removed from Leghorn? Like, I know especially you say, like, it's going to cause damage, and I know you said it's meant to leave, like, hope of, like, the way everything drags on, but I'm curious about that.
Could you say the question one more time?
How is the tapestry removed from Leghorn?
How is the tapestry removed from Leghorn? Oh, so Leghorn is a word for unicorn, actually. How is it removed from the town? How does it get out there? Well, I think part of so let me repeat the question first before I forget. Tiffany's question was about in the unicorn in captivity, how the tapestry is removed from the town at one of the points, right? So this is based on the real unicorn tapestries, which are housed at the cloisters in New York City. And their history is wild. If you're curious about it, you can look it up on Wikipedia. There's books about it. You can look it up elsewhere. They have literally survived lots and lots of calamities and made their way around the world and made it through World War II. And it's really fascinating how they moved around time. I don't know how they got from that small barn in that town into the museum, but that did in fact actually happen. And I think what I was hoping to get at in the story is that people kept finding them, and even when their lives were in danger, they kept thinking this is worth preserving. They kept thinking like there's something about this thing that is maybe not bigger than ourselves, because that feels a bit cliched, but like there's something about artwork that even if times are going crazy, that we want to put it in a vault, we want to keep it, we want to save it for the next generation. And for me, I was just so impressed by that story, because to have that amount of hope when you're literally dying of starvation, like that's amazing. To say, I'm going to spend an extra day saving this tapestry from destruction. Does that help? Yeah. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Liza. I'm from STEMI St. John, and I know you earlier mentioned that these stories were not always intended to be compiled.
Yes.
So I'm wondering what inspired you to assemble all of these into one cohesive collection like this?
Thank you. So Liza's great question was about what inspired me to put all these disparate stories that I didn't write as part of the same book into a collection. So there came a time a few years into writing when I suddenly had amassed a lot of short stories, and I frequently send my work out for publication, and I also get a whole lot of rejection. The stories in the collection, I think, were rejected around 500 times overall, which is pretty normal for anyone who's thinking of becoming a writer. You just really need to get used to rejection. There came a time when there was a call for this contest, the Iowa Short Fiction Award, to send manuscripts. And what got me to actually submit was the judge. The judge's name was Jamil John Koshai. He's an amazing writer. Everyone should go read his books. I loved his work. So I did not feel ready to submit the book, but he was the judge that year, so I knew I had to submit it. And at that time, I didn't have a book, right? So I saw that he was the judge. It was free to submit. I was so used to rejection all the time. I was immune to it at that point. So I took every single story I had written and I put them together into a manuscript, which is not the typical way people write short story collections. Usually it's a little more thoughtful than that. I spent some time putting them in order. I picked a title, and I had just enough for the minimum page limit for this contest. And then I said, this is so silly. The document that I was using to prepare my submission was actually called Iowa Short Fiction Award LOL, like lol, because I thought it was so silly of me to be submitting to this contest. But I sent it in and I didn't think about it because I expected to be rejected. And then I got a phone call that I had won it. So I think the moral of the story is don't self-reject. If you're not sure you're ready for something, but you really want it, put your foot in that door and make somebody else reject you, because you should not be the one rejecting yourself. So the reason I created the collection was really because an opportunity arose. And then after that, I got really excited because I began to see the stories as a collection, but it took this outside push to do so.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, Ms. Sheffer, I'm back.
Hi.
I wanted to ask, what is all this and what does it mean to you?
Oof. So tell me your name again.
Joshua.
Joshua's question was about what these student projects across the front. I am not the person who created these. I believe these are Southeastern students' projects in response to the Man in the Banana Trees stories. How I feel about them is kind of in awe. It is so weird and wonderful to see things from my imagination that I wrote like on my couch in my pajamas up here in these physical forms talking back to me. It is such an honor and so cool. And I just want to sit here reading them the rest of the day. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. They're so cool.
I just had one question.
Yes.
It was, a lot of your stories are like open interpretation.
Yes.
Are there any of your stories you wrote with like you wanted them to be interpreted in a specific way?
So the question was if there's any stories I wrote that I wanted to be interpreted in a specific way. I do think that I hope there are feelings and questions that people come away with, but in terms of like, I want people to change in this way or to think about, to have an answer, I don't really think so. I think what really attracts me to writing stories is the fact that they're so complicated. Ursula K. Le Guin has a quote that I'm going to mangle right now, but she basically said that stories are about ideas that are so complex that this is actually the shortest way they can be written, if that makes sense. This is the shortest point from A to B. You can't take a sentence and say, okay, here's the theme of this story. You can try, but all the other themes are also equally as valid, and that's what makes a short story, or a novel, a novel. And I think that's true. I think that their endless complexity is what keeps me coming back. I will say, as I'm writing them, I do get excited about certain congruencies or patterns or ideas, but it's not that there's just one thing. For instance, nobody's asked about Mouse Number 6. That story was really hard to write and took me a lot of time. And I think the fact that it was about an idea that I can't write into one sentence or one paragraph or one page, but has to be this complex was what really excited me about that story.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't have much of a question, but another girl came up and asked about the Ricky short story, and that was my favorite. In our English class, we have to do daily journals, and we read a couple of your short stories, and that one really stuck with me. I have a younger brother with autism, and he's 6, and so many of the things that were in the story, I was like, whoa, like that's exactly like, I think even because I was just looking over the short stories again, because I was trying to come up with a question because I wanted to come up with an ask. But you kind of said everything I wanted to ask about. But I think it was one of the first lines. It was the walkie-talkie. She was like, he needs a break. Can you come get him? And then later on, towards the end of the story, right before he fell apart, she said he was feeling a certain way about the consequences. Like he was anticipating consequences, and that's why he was walking too slow.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask if you intentionally put those things in there where they were like assuming what he was feeling, and they were completely wrong.
Yes.
Like it was just funny. Like it was exactly like they had decided what he was feeling and why he was doing something, and then later he clearly wasn't. Like that wasn't it.
I think that's a really astute observation. So the question was, in Ricky, there's several moments where the narrator assumes what Ricky needs or wants, and she is horribly wrong. Yes, that was definitely intentional. And I think one of the things I was thinking about was how often we just shrink what students need or what children need down to what we can provide, not what they actually need. So it's like just making them more convenient for our lives as opposed to really hearing or seeing them. No, go ahead, go ahead.
It was like a great like representation of it, because so many times, like from my experience, someone in our family who doesn't know him as well will be like, oh, he's overstimulated, he needs a break, and it's like, no, he actually just wants this one specific thing. You just need to know them so personally and have so much patience.
Yeah.
And I just thought your story was amazing about that, and it just really encapsulated exactly how I felt, and it was hard to put into words.
Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. I actually also have family members with autism too, and that was something I was thinking about as writing this story. And I think too, I mean, right on the surface of the story, there's the idea of needing to slow down. and like stop the action to really, really be with people. And how often we don't do that because there's bells and deadlines and assignments and online portals and all these things. But what really matters is the human beings. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Lola. Sorry.
You're good.
So I read Reentry,
Mm-hmm.
and as a psych major and somebody who's very interested in neuropsychology for
Yeah.
possibly a master's, I think the concept of that story is just so engaging.
Thank you.
And the fact that you left the injury up
Mhm.
to, I guess, the reader's point of view.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, because I think it was great. I think it kept me a lot more interested in the story
Mhm.
than I originally would have been if you just told me she was in a wreck or
Mhm.
she did this or she did that.
Mhm.
And I think that the fact that you left it up to question was really something I liked, and I
Mhm.
wanted to know if there was anything you had in your head for what the injury was.
Yeah.
Or,
Right. Okay. So Lola's question was about reentry. And the question was the main character's injury is left a little unclear. The exact path, there's a lot of details left out in that story because we have massive time jumps, etc. I think the nature of her injury, so she ejects from a jet in training, then it breaks a lot of bones. But I think it's also the thing that the story is most about is the PTSD of that, less so the actual injuries, but more so like her feelings of not feeling ready for both day-to-day life or going back to her job or interacting with other human beings, her idea of her identity as a pilot being shattered. And yeah, I think that was what I was grappling with, and the idea of what it took to start, not to finish, but to start to heal from that being this really small but crucial interaction. Yeah.
so, did you choose pottery for a specific reason, or?
Yeah. Well, in a lot of ways, writing has been that for me, but I didn't want to write about writing. I think pottery, because it's so visceral and physical, was exciting to me. And then as the story developed, the idea of putting things in the kiln, of not only like committing to something and taking the time to make it, but then giving it up and for that last stage and putting it in a really hot fire and seeing what happened, that became exciting to me. So I think with a lot of my stories, I start out playing with lots of ideas. I use lists. So it might have been that there were lots of other art forms, but then when I came up with pottery, I was like, that has more resonance than the others, because pots can break and they feel scary in that way. And that I think obviously relates to her fear of re-entering.
Yeah, I think, the pottery in the kiln was so sensitive, because at that point in your life, when she's going through this, she's trying to cope, and then there's so many things that can mess that up.
Yeah.
There's so many other factors outside of what you plan in your daily living that can just pop in and break and start you all over again.
Exactly.
So I think the concept of the pottery I really, really like that story. That's why I wanted to come up and talk about it. That's my favorite.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am, of course. Thank you for answering my questions.
Of course. Hi.
My name's Allison. I'm in the process of reading the chapter on plein air, and I wanted to know what made you want to write the main character as a ghost?
Thank you, Allison. So I love that question. The question is about en plein air and why the main character is a ghost. So that story was heavily inspired by a real visit I took to Natchitoches. And the artist colony there, it's formerly named the Monroe Plantation, I believe. I'd have to check my notes. But it was later turned into an artist colony, an all-white artist colony. But it's actually the place where one of our most famous artists, Clementine Hunter, got her start. She was staff, I believe, at the artist colony. Was not there as an artist, but she used leftover paints and self-taught and became an incredible painter. And I was there with my friend, who was a historian, so he was teaching me a lot about this while we were visiting it. It is now basically the Clementine Hunter Museum, too. So like, the whole identity has shifted of this place to now being about her art. And I remember thinking, if one of those artists who was at that artist colony, like one of the all-white artist colony was here, that ghost might explode. Like that ghost would be so jealous and so surprised and so feel such feelings about that they might just explode with rage. And that's not actually where the story ends now, but that was the original ending. It was like full of rage and jealousy and these nasty, nasty feelings. But that tension was the original idea for the story of how much that place had shifted. Obviously, the story is really different. It's no longer a plantation. Now it's like a corporate retreat. There's lots of different things. But it was fun to have an idea of this place, this land, this building that has gone through all these identities and have a ghost who's seen them all and has a lot of feelings about what that place has been through.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So hi, my name is Tommy.
Hi.
And my question is, so I understand you think that, AI has many negative effects.
I do.
Like, facial recognition and false positive.
Sure.
But do you think it should be restrained in terms of like chatbots in order to encourage more free thinking in like English classes, per se?
Yes. So Tommy's question was about restricting AI in English classes, chatbots in English classes to encourage more free thinking. My answer is yes with a period at the end of it. In my own classes, I ask students to handwrite, actually, because I think for me, writing is how I think. So the idea of having something else do that for me takes me out of the equation in a way that I'm like, what's the point? Yeah, I think that, and honestly, in my day job, I do a lot of research on creativity and how to teach creativity. And it is a muscle that can be taught and can be strengthened and can be practiced, and it can also be lost. And that is very frightening to me. So yes, period. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for those wonderful questions. It's one of my favorite days of the semester when I get to hear what's been going on in your minds as you're reading these stories. So please, let's express our gratitude to Maggie for those wonderful answers.
Thank you. Ooh, thank you. My biggest fan right there.
Big stamp of approval. Now, our next event begins at 11, but Maggie, would you be willing to sign some books in the
Of course, yeah. Or answer questions, whatever.
So you all can line up this way, and Maggie will be at the table over here for a book signing. Thank you all so
Maggie Sheffer to Southeastern, and thank you to the support we get from the College of Arts and Humanities and Social Sciences, the Southeastern Channel, and the Southeastern Writing Center. There will be a QR code on the screen at the end of the presentation. Be sure to use your phones to get your QR code so that we know you're here and give us your responses to questions about your enjoyment of the presentation. Please take a chance also to have a look at the artwork on the screen and also the projects along the dais here. These were produced by classes taught by Sherry Craig, Chris McBride, Nicolas Ramos, Michelle Bellavia, Sarah Shalaj, and Pat Gibson. Thank you to the classes for producing these wonderful projects. Now to introduce Maggie Sheffer, who got her MFA from Randolph College, and she comes to us from Tulane University, where she teaches courses in design thinking and speculative fiction as tools for social change. In New Orleans, Maggie is a founding member of the Third Lantern Lit, the local writing collective, and the Nautilus and the Wildcat writing groups. She's a member of the Brackish Artist Collective, a program by the New Orleans Water Collaborative, which provides opportunities for artists to explore our complex and disconnected relationship with water in Southeast Louisiana. Our common read text, The Man in the Banana Trees, won the Iowa Short Fiction Award in 2024. And the collection was also named as a Debutful Best Debut Book of the Year, an Electric Literature Most Exciting Debut Collection, and also a finalist for the PEN America Robert W. Bingham Prize. Other prizes include a 2023 Scholar in Fiction Award from the Adroit Journal, a top 25 finalist for Limerick Train's Short Story Award for New Writers, and her story, Tiger on My Roof, was a finalist for the 2024 Chautauqua Janus Prize. Maggie said in an interview that what keeps her coming back to draft after draft is being feeling on the edge of her skill. And as readers, I think we feel very much on the edge of that as well. Please welcome Maggie Sheffer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and for being here. Can I read you some stories? I'm going to do a little mixtape of some stories for about half an hour from The Man in the Banana Trees, and then if you'll allow me, I'd like to end with something new that wasn't in the collection. And if you have a request, honestly, just shout it out, because I'm going to go that way. But I think I'm going to start with The Wedding Table. Let me find that one. 66. I'm the kind of person who loves to read along, so no shame if you want to. I'm on page 66. The Wedding Table. Before our gathered families, Elena and I took our seats across from one another at the wedding table. It was small and round on the dais, with chairs for just us two, and laid with the finest china. Someone had put out all the sauces from the shared community stockpile: ponzu, Worcestershire, teriyaki, A1 and ketchup, yellow mustard, and Dijon. Each bottle was half full, brought out for only the most special occasions, savored, saved, and passed down. I'd seen them before for ceremonies, but I had never tasted them. I wanted to try them all. Maybe that's what marriage would be like, trying all the special sauces together. Induction into a mystery, the end of loneliness. I smiled at Elena, willing her to be brave. Her simple brown hair was tied up in intricate ropes. She looked like herself under her serious costume and painted on eyebrows and lips, the same girl I'd fed calves with and danced with and sat behind in machinery class. At the center of the table, the grill glowed. The embers of the heart, sang the priest. At his cue, I warmed my cleaver over the heat. Elena lifted her slender left wrist to the red tablecloth. I squeezed her hand in mine to calm her nerves. I leaned forward to get more leverage. She closed her eyes, and I brought my scorching cleaver down, fast and clean as I could, for her sake. The coagulants and painkillers worked. Elena never cried out, just breathed in quickly through pursed lips. Our guests murmured with approval. Flames rose as I used my silver tongs to place her severed hand on the grill. Soon after consecrating our interdependence, I'd use a silver cocktail fork to wrangle out all the succulent bits. The audience politely clapped. She'd done so well, after all her fretting. Very respectable. Her expression was almost euphoric, drugs and adrenaline and not a little affection. She used her good hand to wipe her eyes. My turn, my left wrist. I rolled up my sleeve. Elena was turning her own cleaver over the fire one-handed. Unbidden, I imagined a clarinet, an instrument I'd never touched before, the warm barrel suspended between both hands, my fingers gracing the holes and silver keys dancing over it. Maybe I could learn to play. Maybe I'd be great at it. Dear Elena brought her cleaver down. I pulled my wrist away, jostling the plates. The cleaver clanged against the table obscenely. A wine glass tipped over and shattered on the stone floor. Such disappointment in Elena's eyes. She said nothing. She stared at me, waiting. Her right hand lingered on the cleaver's handle. I had proved myself selfish, the greatest sin in such times of hardship. Unity over independence, said the priest. At his words, the quiet and stillness broke open. My parents and Elena's began to help each other out of their seats. They reached the wedding table. They moved beside me to pin me with their 4 hands against the high back of my heavy ceremonial chair. Thank you. Okay. I think I'm going to read Ricky next, which is the very first story. There's some Ricky fans out here. I have seen some beautiful Rickies today, and it makes me cry. So if I cry during this reading, just consider it part of the experience and not a mistake. Here we go. Ricky's on page 1. Ricky. Ricky needs a break. Can you come get him? The text comes from Odell in the bio classroom. I grab my lanyard and my walkie-talkie. I take the stairs. I go to perp walk Ricky to the reflection room again. When I get there, Odell seems to have regained control. The 9th graders in their ripped jeans are rotating from lab station to lab station, setting up wet slides and adjusting microscope platforms. I spot Ricky's felt and feather form. He is in the corner, deposited on the teacher's rolly chair, with the big, broad desk separating him from the other children. We never had a puppet student before Ricky. He is sitting on his gloved hands, maybe to keep himself still. His fuchsia felt torso is breathless. He spins silently in the chair. The paler pink feathers around his neck flounce. That's 5 more pipettes, Odell whispers. I clock the sparkling glass remains in the plastic bin on his desk. I nod. I am here to help. I wonder if there are other schools that would be more supportive learning environments for Ricky. I don't think we can keep this up. We call them outbursts and invent terminology to express our acceptance and patience. We assign him to tiered support services, write him a 504 behavioral plan, and grant him a health exemption from swimming. Some of the faculty assume he is mocking them when his felt eyelids stretch way back, his eyes full circles of awe as he learns something new. Sensitivity training helps them with that to a degree. In staff meetings, we remind ourselves he doesn't mean any harm. But we are already making so many accommodations. At lunch, he picks up a special tray piled with the wax fruits and vegetables from a child's play kitchen. Every student deserves an education, deserves to thrive. I believe this, but no student can be allowed to interrupt the schooling of their peers, and that's where I come in. I crouch down next to Ricky, who is engulfed by his chair. Now he is swinging his stick-thin blue velvet legs and his puppy monster paws. He doesn't want to look at me at first. He considers the windows. We've had this conversation many times before. I fear I'm just following the empathy script now. Get down on the child's level, lead with questions, lay out clear next steps. Ricky, come with me for a minute. He ruffles and turns to me. As I kneel next to him, up close I can see the scratches on his ping-pong eyeballs. I'll need to remind the other boys about that. They don't mean anything by it. It's tricky, I know. Ricky enjoys the rough play. His body can take a beating. He invented a game where the others throw him through things, alley-oop him over the bathroom stalls or into a dumpster or out of this open second-floor window once. He loves the slapstick. He can be bashed and tossed and emerge unscathed, theatrically sailing like a kickball with his limbs trailing limply behind. He pops back up. He laughs. Yet he is vulnerable to the littlest pricks and snags, scissors, sharp corners, fingernails even. Those little marks sink in and stay sunk. He doesn't bleed or bruise, but the rips in his felt won't just mend themselves. His sparkles come away on our hands, and we wash them down the schoolhouse drain with stubborn pink industrial soap. At my request, Ricky hunches his shoulders, hangs his head, and plop pops down from the rolly chair. I sigh, so dramatic. He shuffles his large fluffy feet against the linoleum. The other kids stop their chatter to watch. They get distracted by his perpetual performance. He sucks up, that's the root of the whole issue. Ricky loves class, but too much. He sucks up all the air, all the attention. The other ninth graders give Ricky a covert little wave before they return to their pond scum. They've adopted Ricky as a kind of mascot. I worry this is an unhealthy attachment. They validate Ricky's behavior, which is the last thing he needs. I've seen some students start to imitate him, maybe unconsciously, speaking in his exaggerated sing-song cadence. It is just the two of us in the hallway, and I guide Ricky toward the reflection room, though it's not like he needs directions. Ricky and I have spent many hours there together. We are a progressive school. The reflection room has a painting of a butterfly on the door, a thrift store couch, acrylic paints, and a lamp I brought from home to soften the light. Ricky made the garlands that decorate the room himself, those colorful chains of interlocking circles that are really more appropriate project for younger students. Yet Ricky does not want to come with me. He slows his steps and swivels his head to and fro. Tell me what happened, I say. I'm holding his hand, which I wouldn't do for the other ninth graders, but he likes it. His hand is soft and the exact temperature of the air. Last time, it was singing during the state exams. The time before that, gnawing playfully on his classmates' hair and fingers. Another time, doing elaborate jigs during silent sustained reading. His reading level is the highest in the grade, so we know that's not the issue. Perhaps a combo processing and attention disorder. Did you know that euglena have both plant and animal characteristics? They have their own chloroplasts and also a tail. They hunt, too. Ricky gives me this knowledge like a gift. At least he was paying attention in class. Perhaps he relates to the euglena, not quite this and not quite that. How much sand do you think it would take to bury me? Or what about you? Ricky asks. A whole lot, I answer to keep him moving. Worse, once during Spanish group work, Senora Garfield heard shrieking and found Ricky sitting in the center of his assigned cultural research project team, Guatemala, pulling back the fabric of his midsection to show the students what lies underneath. Later, we rationalized. He forgets the others aren't built like him, how shocking it can be for them. That day, though, Senora Garfield told us how Ricky was laughing with his mouth wide open in joy as he used his nubby hands to pull back the curtain on the vacancy inside him. Nada, nada, just air, popsicle stick scaffolding, and some seams of hot glue. He apologized the next Monday in front of the whole class. He said he thought they'd like to see. Of course, the other kids in his group were pretty shaken, and of course, it got around the whole school. Sophomore Shirley Abramson came in for counseling, saying sometimes she suspected, sometimes she was so sure that she was full of emptiness too. She had thought it was just her till Ricky went around showing everyone. Now she was less alone. Now she could not ignore it. I try again. Why, I ask Ricky, when we are walking in parallel, are we here? We are here to learn, Ricky answers. He swings my hand in his. He has already forgotten to be sullen. He is looking all around with curiosity, though this is the same hall he walks every day. We pass a poster that just says "Yet" in big green letters. Yet, I think, we are all working too hard to keep having this conversation. Ricky is not progressing as he should. There are other students who need our attention too. I'm thinking we should put him on a discipline contract, maybe try different incentives. Something needs to give. The situation is good for no one. I'll speak to the principal about alternative placements, perhaps a school with a no-nonsense approach, or one that is arts enriched. A senior, Andy, walks by, huffing under the weight of her backpack, wearing her world weariness like a coat from the wrong era, all the buttons and seams and buckles just slightly off. When he sees her, Ricky ignores my questioning and waves to her. He drops my hand and scuffles over to her. He comes up to her knees. The senior's face inflates with joy. "What do you like in your tacos?" Ricky asks. I learn that Andy's favorite filling is sweet potato. She must be running late for something, some class or appointment, but doesn't seem hurried anymore. Watching them, I don't think they are particular friends even, but in that instant there is a sense that the two of them might just, any second now, shed their book bags, abandon the building, and walk through the hilly woods. They might continue, pointing out the insects, the birds, the fungus, the names of colors, pausing to read every historical marker and plaque, an odd, impromptu traveling pair, till they get to the train station, its vibrant map, and then emerge and join the raucous chorus of the city. Or maybe they will go to the shore and take turns burying each other in the sand. This is what happens so often in Ricky's classes, as if he rips a skylight into the popcorn ceiling, and the sky distracts from the lesson plan. There's a reason we have roofs. "Ricky," I say seriously and low. He walks away from Andy and joins me, reaching up to grasp my hand again. The reflection room is in sight now. Beyond the door, Ricky can sit alone and pick from a jar of colored gel pens and some blank paper to write letters of anger or apology. Then, maybe, after enough time and contrition, he will be allowed back to class. Some students like the reflection room so much they try to sneak in here, to stay. But not Ricky. He tries to be penitent, to earn his way out. He writes eloquent, long apologies filled with figurative language. He regrets saying and doing the wrong thing. He wants to be better. He does not understand what he is doing wrong. That means I know that he is not listening, for I've told him many times what he is doing wrong. I've told him to look at his peers, see how they are, try mimicking them. Don't reinvent everything. Don't show off. Don't stand up from your desk and walk to the windows when your favorite garbage truck goes by. That his teachers have his best interests at heart, and their directions will be his guide. That I am here to help, but I can't do it for him. We walk the especially quiet of an empty school hallway that will soon be echoing with sneaker squeaks and children's shouts. "Miss, I need?" Ricky seems to slow. He is apprehensive about his consequences. His hand drags in mine. "Consequences are part of learning, and I know you love learning," I tell him. I keep pulling. He must go. I'm already behind. "Miss?" Ricky's voice sounds soft and distant. "Ricky, let's get a move on." I am walking along, holding Ricky's hand, and then two things happen at once. I hear a slight collapse, the falling of something very soft to the floor, and Ricky's hand goes loose in mine. Looking back, I see, strung out across the long hallway, all the pieces of him. I do not see what snag Ricky has gotten caught on, but I have been pulling. In my frustration, I tugged too hard, noticed too little. Soundlessly and quickly, I scrambled to the floor, hands and knees. Andy is on her hands and knees too. There are little bits of glitter stuck to my hands, I see as I wave her away. She shouldn't see this. She is gripping her laminated hall pass so hard she might slice herself open. She is bending over to pick up some of the trim that was once Ricky's shoulder. She is calling for help, but there is only me. I crawl to gather all the pieces of Ricky before the bell rings. I worry he will be trod underfoot, scattered, before the other kids can see. I reach for the limp sequined fabric, the ping pong balls, the empty gloves, the popsicle sticks, the twine that acted as a pulley for Ricky's elbows, knees, and wrists. Loose feathers float across the linoleum floor. I grasp at them. I can only hold so much at once. One of the balls that were his eyes goes bouncing away down a stairwell. I try to make a cradle out of my lap, sitting on the floor. I pressed my fistfuls together, willing them to stick, to reconnect, to move, to flex and shimmy and shiver. But when I pull my hands apart, his materials fall through and down. The feathers drift the slowest and land on top of the pile, soft, still, and finally silent in my waiting lap. Thank you. Okay. There's a lot of flash in the collection, and those are really fun to read out loud because you get to hear a lot of different stories. So I'm going to read another flash piece. Flash is under 1,000 words, so very short. So I'm going to read The Midnight Revolt at Bertrand's Year-Round Christmas Store, which is on page 89. Midnight Revolt at Bertrand's Year-Round Christmas Store. When Max was 8, his favorite spectacle was the back wall at Bertrand's, a whole wall of snow globes. Each flashed a circumspect winter scene. No empty strip malls, no scorching parking lots, just snowy church weddings and sleds making their way downhill. Every 40 minutes on slower days, an employee dressed in red booty shorts and snowflake suspenders turned over a selection of the globes so that their flakes drifted downward, furiously slow, catching customers' eyes. The store faced the Atlantic, across Florida's stretch of the A1A. Air-conditioned tours stopped on their journeys down to Key West to enjoy the novelty of candy canes in July. Max lived in a raised bungalow a block further back from the sea. Bertrand's kept the AC turned so high it was like entering another world. Older boys came to gawk at the hard nipples. Max came to breathe in the cold. When Max was 9, his dad stopped calling. His mom finally caved and let Max pick out a snow globe of his own. Max had had his eye on his special globe for years. On tiptoes, he reached for it. Top shelf, fourth from the left, a city ice rink, a skater in a short purple dress arching her ankle over her high ponytail. Behind her, every skyscraper window was alight. Max imagined his own skirts swirling in the cold, him the one carving fiercely into the ice with very sharp shoes, knowing that one particular yellow window in the tall, anonymous city was his entirely. Max shook the globe. His mother frowned. He swore the tiny skater was gliding. He did a twirl. His mother pulled his hand to still him. Max grew his hair long in a high ponytail just like the skaters, a solitary, defiant swish, swish. He peered into the snow globe, tracing the intricate patterns she carved. At 13, Max picked the globe up out of its lacquered stand. It was heavier than he remembered. Some boys in school had taken scissors to his ponytail. Snip, snip. They had spotted him, spotted her, the part he'd shrunk so small and closed up in a globe and left on a shelf. He lay back on his bed and placed the globe on his breastbone so that the little woman would skate into him. Slice, slice. The skater landed on one foot with a flourish of her arms. Max wanted to hate the skater. Tomorrow he would get rid of the globe. He would ask his mother to buzz his hair down to the scalp. But for one more night, he wanted to feel the weight of her, her city, its different sky. Max awoke to a dark room. The globe was swaying, rocking into the center of him. He could not catch it in time. It rolled off him, onto the floor, cracking and spilling there onto the laminate boards. Minute snowflakes salted the floor. Max offered a finger to help the skater up from the shards. She spoke. It was like the flapping of a hummingbird's wings, unintelligible and insistent. Max wanted to understand. She squatted and then jumped, leapt against Max's window like her legs had grasshopper springs, like she was trying to tip over the whole house, like she had tipped her globe. She must be trying to get home, get back to her own kind. That was what Max would have wanted. She fell back on the floor and started skating angry figure eights. Max's mom would be furious about the scratches. The skater needed him. He could bring her home to Bertrand's. Max found a Dixie cup in the kitchen, put an ice cube in it, set her in it gently, like he might a pill bug pet. At Bertrand's, the skater got agitated. Max could feel her banging against the soft sides of the cup. He heaved a concrete nutcracker through the locked glass double doors. Alarms blared, setting off a cascade of Santa's jingle bell rocking. At the back wall, before he could place her on the high shelf, the skater began her call. Amplified by the mouth of the cup, it sounded like a dryer spinning so fast it might take off. Her kind heard and understood. They rushed up. Shepherds and townfolks and penguins and cobblers leaned into their curvatures, pushing and climbing. Their globes trembled, then fell into the plush red carpet. They began to roll, a fleet of them glancing off each other, down the linoleum aisles and out, a clunky bulbous parade through the door, across the parking lot, then the highway, then the shore. The globes made tracks in the still warm sand, crisscrossing and braiding into each other on their way toward the sea. Max followed. He sat in the sand and took off his shoes. The skater was climbing at the lip of her cup to get a better look, so Max turned it sideways, away from the town and its light pollution, toward the dark sea. Together, Max and his little woman watched the globes enter the surf, bobbing, risking together the roughness of the open water. Max envied them their true north, their Gulf Stream current, their thick glass. They hung a left, toward the snow that is not bone or porcelain or soap flakes. They could not have made this trip before, but they seemed to know where they were going. In the cup, the skater was still. She was globeless. She, globeless, was stuck with him. Her skates were part of her feet. Her ice cube had melted. Max would find a way to keep her happy, keep her safe, keep her cold till they could go north together. She opened her red bow mouth and spoke, the dulcet sound of ripe magnolias slapping into each other in a breeze. Max didn't speak her strange language, but she could teach him. He could learn. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going on my phone because I'd like to read you a story that isn't actually in the collection, but I feel like it's spiritually part of the collection. I wish I'd been able to include it. And it is called Jubilee, and it was published on Smokelong Quarterly, so you can find it online too. You don't need any context for it because it's a short story, but they did publish it with a big picture of a cruise ship next to it, if that helps you envision what's going on in this story, since you probably haven't read it before. So this is, and Jubilee is the name of a real Carnival cruise ship. Jubilee. I fell in love with an improv comedian after the apocalypse. Neither was what I had planned for myself. When the attack came, we were both with different people, people who died horrible deaths, too horrible to mention to each other, except now, tonight, just once, for the first time, after curfew, after lights out, in the glow of the ship's vending machines and emergency exits, in his cabin, without clothes, naked, in the most dark we could muster. His curtains are closed, but there is still moonlight on the sea. The improv comedian's rank earned him an ocean view. His skills from before make him an excellent teacher, and there is so much learning we all must do. Before the invasion, I was an interior designer in Kansas City. Now I am a cafeteria server with an interior cabin. My expertise, useless, in ochre and rattan and the spring 2024 issue of Architectural Digest, lingers like a vestigial organ. One day, I rearranged the chairs in the Blue Iguana Tiki Lounge on the panorama deck to foster movement and conversation among the survivors. I doubt anyone noticed, but I felt better having done something. Until this week, the improv comedian was just my instructor for Military Training 101 on the Riviera deck in the teen zone. Resistance leadership repurposed the laser tag equipment and VR headsets to provide a base level of combat skills and screen us for special military aptitude. The warrior we needed might just be hiding in that Midwestern yoga mom, that poet or software developer. We stood in a circle as he led us in rounds of zip, zap, zop. In goggles and gloves, we yes-anded our way through offensive formations. The simulation was built off real footage from the attack. We flew toward their mothership, as wide as the moon, fanged and gleaming, into the swarm, taking out as many small vessels as we could, chasing, spin dodging, pincering, racking up points before our screens blacked out and we started again. When we crept up the leaderboard, his praise was unsurprised. There it is, the lateral thinking, the risk-taking, the energy. He insisted we could, enthusiastically and emphatically, even when we had not yet. But my scores trended downward. The mothership loomed impenetrable and ferocious. I kept trying to get around it. I wanted to see what was on the other side of this massive thing. They shot me down again and again. Each of us hoped we were the ones with the secret resolve and pugnacity, the next who would be transferred off Jubilee and into the resistance effort. We all had someone to avenge. We were bound together by grief, by the burden of our luck. Why were we here with soft-serve machines, elevators, and chandeliers when so many others were gone? We all knew someone better, someone who deserved life more. If they were here, they would know what to do. My group counseling sessions were Wednesday night on Lido deck in a drained pool. We climbed down the ladder or slid down the slide and sat cross-legged on the white fiberglass. We observed confidentiality. We committed to each other that we would try for a little while longer. We wailed into the white curved walls, which funneled our echoes up into the sky and over the waves. We sounded like we belonged, new creatures of the sea. We agreed to meet again, same time and place, next week. A few days ago, the improv comedian asked me to stay after training. I'd fallen off the leaderboard entirely. He was concerned, I was embarrassed, but his eyes were soft. So I told him the truth, how my interior design clients always forgot about the back of things. That in their open concept floor plans, they'd end up looking at the back of that 10 grand couch. High-end furniture has visual interest even from behind. Attention to the seams, the lines, the grains. A cheap couch will just be bare, unfinished, rough. It's a tell, or a point of vulnerability, like the belly of a cat. Have you noticed, I asked him, we've never seen the mothership from the back? He pursed his lips. He looked at the ceiling. He squinted his eyes. I was committing to the bit, I said. I could tell he was going to laugh before it happened. It started in his mouth and telegraphed through him. It moved through me, too. Laughter means something different now, like whatever alchemy turns paper into currency, or how this boat became salvation, or how memories become blessings. After our terror and loss, laughter is a new thing, learning to walk. The improv comedian and I were alone with the VR headsets and gloves scattered around us, still blinking red and blue like the people who'd worn them had evaporated. But a third thing had stumbled into the room with us. We both saw it. That made us laugh more. What a ridiculous time for something so new, so fragile. At that moment, the clock started. I knew I'd be leaving soon. We both knew it. My idea might not be the solution, but it was worth following up on, and that was enough. He'd report my strategic potential up the chain. We'd just found each other, and we had no time to waste. Since that day, we've been finding each other over and over. Right now, he is asleep in his bed. Tomorrow, the Jubilee will reach the coordinates, pull up kissing close to the aircraft carrier, and I will disembark. Loving each other won't stop me leaving. It changes nothing. It changes everything. Your body does some things without your permission, like surviving, like growing a new heart to break. I get out of bed and open the curtains. Moonlight pours in. The end. Cool. I think that's it. Cool. And that's it for my reading portion. But I believe I'm going to be signing books right over there again. If you'd like to, or talking to folks, I'd love to meet you and answer any questions. Good. Yeah.